Wonderful, wonderful, John. Thank you. Wow, what a great intro. Today I'm sitting at Texas State in San Marcos, just south of downtown, about 5 miles, in something that we call Star Park, where I hold one of my other gigs as co-director of the CIEDAR Consortium. CIEDAR stands for Connected Infrastructure for Education, Demonstration, and Applied Research. And we're building 9 living labs here and hoping to break ground in July and have our first 2 buildings up and running within 12 months. And when it's all said and done, it'll be 1 million square feet and about 6,000 people working down here doing research. So fun, fun, fun. Welcome, John. Welcome, Llewelyn. John, how are you today?
I'm just fine. Another great day in paradise with a little tint to it. But other than that, it's a wonderful day. A cool breeze came in the great state of Texas, and I'm doing fine.
That's right.
What is the little shift to it?
Well, it was 104 yesterday.
It was really hot yesterday. Yeah.
My wife, who actually lived in Egypt for 2 years, nonetheless doesn't like the heat. The mere thought of 140. I don't know how she survived in Egypt, but she did. She doesn't do.
She wore those long dresses, right? So.
I'm pretty indifferent to it. I don't mind. I grew up in a part of Zimbabwe, which is on a plateau, and very, very mild and very predictable. We didn't have weather broadcasts 6 months a year because there was no point. It was kind of pleasant.
You know, in Texas, when Texas we say if you don't like the heat, get out of here and go to Connecticut. And you know, it's wonderful to be with a real African American. You being from, you know, I'm an American. You're an African American. I really like that. We need to make that distinction.
Waiting all week to say that, John.
Yes, I have, especially since I had a golf game with 2 African Americans.
Did I tell you about what happened with Joe Madison, the African American broadcaster? We were doing a live event together when African Americans were quite upset because Obama hadn't taken a more dramatic role in their interests, or they thought they hadn't. And then the white community was somewhat riled up, and everybody was riled up. So Madison turns to me and he says, well, why are the whites so riled up? We understand why the blacks are. Why are the whites so riled up? But he had just gone through this whole spiel of saying I was an African American, so I was able to say, Joe, don't ask me, I'm an African American.
Well, I would play golf.
As the audience was almost entirely African American, it was up by Howard University, a traditionally African American university. It was quite fun.
When I went to golf to play with 2 newcomers who were African American, they were both from South Africa, 2 white guys.
Yeah.
We're just correct.
I love it. I love it. Well, you know, we're in what 110 days lockdown. Maybe things are opening up for some of you. You know, COVID continues to claim bodies. 4,000 people died since last Wednesday. So we're up to 110,925. And
the Wall Street Journal is saying 112 and change.
Well, I got this number is from CDC this morning, so you know it's climbing by the minute, no doubt, right? So all cases about 1.956 million, up 120,000 from last week. So you know it's ticking up, keeps ticking up. Unemployment, I think officially is 13.3% right now. Again, it's expected to climb all the way to 20%, maybe by the end of the year.
It's probably much higher than that.
Yeah. Well, these are all published numbers that came out today.
But it's much traditionally unemployment, because the way it's measured is
right. Yeah, absolutely. Stock market is up. You know, another 1,000 points since last week. It's 27,100 roughly. In New York, Exchange Index is up 500 points since last week, and NASDAQ is up 400 points. So again, you know, the financial guys are betting that things are going to get better. You know, lots of activity in the stock market. There's a new company called Nikola that went public last week, which is a, you know, cousin company of Tesla. They make only trucks, electric trucks. They haven't made a single truck, and they already have an IPO and raised like $100 million. So the electric world is going upside down for sure. You know, interesting though, in the month of May, the 2.5 million new jobs were added to. So 2.5 million jobs got created in the month of May. So, you know, again, the comeback is happening. It's happening, you know, selectively where things are open and so on. We talked a little bit last week about, you know, the sort of the looming potential crisis with no collection of taxes on cities and what's going to happen to a lot of cities' economies and, you know, infrastructure and investments going forward and so on. Gas is up about 4 cents in Austin from last week. So, you know, it went as low as $1.30 at one point and is now back into 160, so 1.59 per gallon. And then, you know, according to the World Bank on Monday, the global economy has shrunk 5.2% so far this year. That's the whole global economy, which is the deepest recession since World War II, again, according to the World Bank on Monday. And it is expected that our own economy, you know, will probably contract this year a total of 6.1%. Which is, you know, a significant number. And the European economy is supposed to shrink 9.1%. So those are, you know, again, you know, a mixed bag of numbers. Some good, some bad. Some, you know, tell a long story. Some tell more of a short story. What are you all thinking? What are you all seeing about that? Are we recovering? Are things, what's the latest from last week? Llewelyn?
I think it is a very mixed bag. I think the rising cases of the virus are very troubling. People have thought they shouldn't take precautions. I see people in this very building where I live going around without masks. It tends to be a divide either in age or in politics. Mm-hmm. And this is very foolish, particularly in this building. There's a lot of medical people work in. They work in a very nearby hospital. But it's troubling everywhere where you see young people who think, as young people do, and as we did one day, are invincible. But it's grave, it's very serious, and we're going to see a lot more deaths before this is over. I think that you can overdwell on the stock market because it really isn't a reflection of what's happening. I had on my television program, White House Chronicle, this week, Peter Morisi, who is a conservative economist out of the University of Maryland, but generally he supports the administration. Generally, he's hostile to China, but he is saying, he said it in the Syndicate column, and then he said it to me on television, that if we don't do something very quickly, the Congress doesn't move and shore up the states with $500 billion per state, essentially, the states are going to start laying off essential workers because they can't pay them. They're not in the same position as the federal government. They can't print money, and by law, they're not allowed to go into deficit financing. So the situation is very grave. There's some adjustments they can make to keep their employment up for a little bit longer, but then they're going to, and suddenly you won't have any money to pay the garbage collectors, the teachers, etc., and we begin a huge dive. The situation in the states is critical, and we have politics in Washington as usual. Mitch McConnell has dismissively said that the states can go bankrupt, which is not a feasible solution. An awful lot of individuals can go bankrupt, though, if they don't have jobs. And the rest of us will be in a powerless state if we don't have any state services from the motor vehicles all the way to garbage, and just little things like administering health programs, most of which go through the states. All education goes through the states. Everyone will be hurt if the states are forced to the wall and the Congress fails to act correctly and in a timely fashion. Time to stop the politics and start the fixing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
John?
well, I think it was good news that the numbers were up, that the jobs were coming back, and I think that what we really don't have is a good mathematical model of how the jobs come back. That is, if you look at where the jobs were, if you say in the aggregate, that's one thing, but if we create a model that really collects data by states, then we can ask what's the difference between California and New York, what's the difference between New York and Maryland, what's the difference between Texas and Louisiana. So I think, first of all, it's a good sign that the jobs are coming back as measured by that measurement of the economy. But we had a good model of how the jobs went away. We had a good model of that didn't work very well. On we estimated 2.5 million Americans would have the virus. So first of all, it's good news, and what that means is that the jobs went away fast. We don't think it will come back in the same kind of way. But the jobs and the entrepreneurs and the business people are a bit coming back. I like the point about where states are. I think that Texas has a rainy day fund. I'm not sure about other states, but that's also a measurement of what's been done in the past. And as you know, Andreas, Texas created 5 times the amount of jobs than any other state in the union. Yeah. So I think we can be very, very interesting. But Llewelyn is certainly right. There could be a devastating effect if states themselves have not handled their business in the past. And we know that tax money depends on business enterprises. So you can look at Detroit, and they're rebuilding. I'm predicting that Detroit, by the way, with all of the young kids buying factories, that Detroit will be the new Silicon Valley of America in the next 15 20 years. But my gosh, where is their tax base? With no tax base whatsoever, they certainly cannot compete with other. Now, the other thing about the stock market, if you have a lot of money in the stock market, it's doing well. God bless America. If you don't, it really doesn't care. But it's not a measurement of the economy, but it is a measurement of wealth and the ability for people to invest in enterprises. Mm-hmm. So to give you a case, if the stock market is down and Andrea starts to do business, then it becomes difficult for wealthy people to invest in that business. And remember, it was wealth that created most of the new companies that we have, whether it's angel networks or venture capitalists or whatever have you. So I agree that the stock market is not the economy, but it is so important for wealth creation. It's so important for people to invest in things, for people to give the 501Cs, the Boys and Girls Club, and et cetera. So Andreas, I'm looking at a model of how America is doing now in terms of the economy. And I am really, I'm encouraged by how jobs have come back. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but we've got a little emphasis of the gig economy now, probably because of Llewelyn's comments 2 or 3 weeks ago. That is, people are saying we must do something with this gig economy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Clearly, there is some much needed foundational transformation around, taxes, benefits, retirement, all kinds of things to accommodate the shifting that is happening, and not really focus, in my opinion, on punishing, a company like Uber or others because they have created a whatever you want to call it, a new class of employee. I think government needs to figure out how to embrace the new models because, again, the business models are happening for obvious reasons. There's a structural lack of response to demand and supply and all kinds of things. And I think that's only going to accelerate, not going to decelerate. So, maybe the world of the freelancer is the world of the future. And again, freelancers have been around forever. I think the first freelancers were, journalists that wanted to write their own books and took time off or something like that, So, so my thoughts are, we have been talking at CMG with a lot of utilities. We started a new project in Watertown, South Dakota, on grid modernization and AMI, and we continue to work with some 15 customers right now. Half of them are utilities, and I can tell you that all the customers that we're talking to are automating. There are two things that are happening that I think nobody's talking about. I'm curious what your thoughts are, but COVID-19, I think we can all agree that has definitely accelerated sort of the transformation to going to automation, digitizing things, using, computers and other non-human resources to deliver the same kind of productivities. And so what was going to happen, maybe take 5-10 years of adoption, has been accelerated to now. And so what I see though at the boardroom level is two things. And again, when I worked at Philips, a $30 billion company in digital equipment at the time, now part of HP, a $14 billion company, is that, earnings per share and dividends and all these things is what drives these companies, right? And keeping their shareholders happy, in addition to being, politically correct with the stakeholders that they deal with on a global basis. But here are the 2 points. Travel and entertainment is always the first thing that goes when you cut budgets and companies that get in trouble. COVID has forced everybody to cut travel and entertainment. We have experienced the wonderful Zoom and other technologies on video conference like we do right now. And so we have been talking to a lot of companies, and the biggest reason why we made Digital 360 Summit virtual, having 60 speakers from multinationals in it, is that they all had ban on traveling. So when you cut back travel and entertainment in a company, all those dollars go straight to the bottom line. So that's something that the financial guys like, right? And so
also you bring up some other things that are very interesting.
Yeah. Let me finish the second point, Llewelyn, real quick. The second point is with COVID again. COVID is that the bottom line of travel and entertainment is key. But the other one is, and here's I'm bringing it up, and I haven't heard it anywhere, but I've been talking about it, connecting the dots, right? Most companies, and Jack Welch started this publicly in the world a long time ago. Every year I get rid of the bottom 5% of my workforce because they're dead wood kind of thing, right? COVID-19 has given a free rein to all corporations to basically say, we have a problem with certain employees. We have the bottom 5%. Here's COVID. Let's lay them off, right? So there is a reshuffling going on of workforce, of individuals, of lack performers, and then T&E. And so, and I don't see, again, as John was saying, the jobs, we know how they went fast, but which jobs are coming back? And, is everybody getting a call back to come back to the workforce? So your thoughts on those two things?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is one of the impediments to recovery is that traditionally this has been the country where there's been marvelous labor mobility. No jobs in California, jobs in Texas, people went to Texas. Originally they went to California because there were jobs there. During this time of COVID, it's very hard to move. You can't do it. A friend of mine is actually thinking of moving to Texas, to your part of the world. Mm-hmm. He's wondering whether they can drive down to get an automobile there, where they'll stay, whether they should rent a mobile home to do it. That's just an example that you have people now unemployed in the Dakotas because of the bust in the fracking boom there. They would like to go somewhere else, but it's not that easy, and it won't be till there is a true opening up. And we have a true opening up. We have some opening, tentative. We need to fix the infrastructure to absorb the workers safely. And that means sanitizing indoor spaces, totally sanitizing them, primarily by cleaning the air. We need to get a discipline with masks or whatever is going to replace masks. And we need a certain amount of social discipline to stop these numbers getting worse. We know that separation, social separation works. We know that masks work. We need to make them easier to deal with, to incorporate them more into the daily life of people. But this is not going to happen suddenly.
Right.
It's going to take time, and jobs are going to disappear. About the gig economy, I think a little wrong that the first freelancers were journalists. I think the first freelancers were people meandering around in the Middle Ages selling things. Guildsmen who became tinkers. There's a lot of freelancing gone on throughout all human history, in fact. I loved it in Africa. We had a man who would come with chickens on a bicycle live in special cages built out of sticks and bark. And another man who would come to every year to fix the mattresses. We had coir mattresses that had to be teased. One who came to clean the carpets. These were all tinkers. They were all in a gig economy. They never heard of that word. Nobody had, but they were gig economy. Africa is full of people in the gig economy. We are going to have, and we need to institutionalize the gig economy so that if you earn your living in the gig economy all the days of your life, you got some social security, something to fall back on. And that is not happening. Maybe the odd individual who's very full of foresight and cautious and careful and sensible, like yourself, John, will put something away that most people don't, which is why we have social security and why it's so important, and what really marks us out as an advanced country rather than being a less advanced country. And
Right.
one of the things that Social Security does have been somehow demonized by the extreme right wing, but in fact, there has been a steady movement towards increased Social Security services over the decades in all advanced countries. Winston Churchill, a conservative, you might say, was a big proponent. He said it was tattooed across his forehead. National insurance, I think was what he called it. We need to get the gig economy going because the jobs that were there will not be there. As to this readjustment about the lower 5% not working again, and by the way, I happen to know two chairmen, including Welsh, but I only knew him by notes that we sent to each other, but I knew his predecessor, and he wreaked havoc on GE over time. Initially, it was hugely successful, but as one senior vice president of GE said to me, it's a snake pit now. It never was, and people loved the General Electric company. It was probably a bit overstaffed, but I always love these people in business who come in, they're going to get rid of the fat and the dead wood, etc. How did it get there? How did all this dead wood get into these companies? It's simply that business changed and people's skills were not wanted. When I worked at the Washington Post, I was president of the newspaper guild. Shock horror, John, it's a trade union. And one of the people that Ben Bradley, the legendary editor, wanted to get rid of was a person called Carl Bernstein. Later on, Ben went around taking credit for hiring him, but Ben would come up to me and say, can I fire Carl? You know he's useless. And I'd say, no, you have arbitration or dismissal and you won't get it. Then after Watergate, when he was a national hero, all of that was forgotten, except I can remember it. But things change, companies go up and down. The other change, T&E is going to be down, travel and entertainment, way down. And for a long time, it may not come back as it has been. We saw the 3 martini lunch, and we've seen other changes, the sort of entertainment that used to take place. But we're also going to see a change in real estate. You and I are doing this, we 3 of us are doing this on Zoom. Many businesses are being conducted this way. So a lot of companies are going to say, why do we need all this expensive real estate? Just for show to begin with. And we found we didn't need it, which means that there'll be a lot, we know there'll be a lot of retail space on the market. There'll also be a lot of office space on the market, are changing in a huge way. And it's very hard, going back to John's earlier point, it's very hard to put numbers to it in a time of such rapid change. You need a little bit of stability to secure your numbers, don't you, John? You're the statistician.
Well, you know, let me just comment, and I'm going to put my professor's hat on here, and I'm going to make a general proposition, and then I'm going to see if we can defend it.
You're not going to charge tuition, are you?
I might.
We're not going to attack tenure, are you?
No, we're not going to attack tenure.
I am.
But for every change in the economy, all jobs that's created because of technology change, we have replaced them. So let's walk down a future avenue and look at what's going on, and we'll wrap it around Andrea's concern with electricity and what's going on there in infrastructure. So if we look at what's going on, we know you said that everything is being automated, and I think you need to comment on that. The fact that the grid is a 60-year-old technology for the most part and has not been automated when everything else has. But let us say that we have the effort to bring manufacturing back to this part of the world, whether it's America or Puerto Rico or Mexico. And let us say, I think the president is going to announce in the Rose Garden today, from all of my intelligence, a program for American cities that will bring the grid. I think it's like a $70 billion program to prepare American cities for bringing manufacturing back. Now, that means that jobs will be created. That means that we got to have additional kind of training. And Llewelyn would tell you, you know, I'm a helicopter boy from Vietnam, that you really don't have to fly these airplanes anymore. You being a pilot, you just push a button and it takes you there. Right? It takes you there. So I think that the more technology advances, the less training I think that people got to get. So when I was coming up, you know, Ms. Bourgeois at the store would sit there patiently and type in all of the prices of the products. Now they just go beep, beep, beep. Well, you know, that technology has taken away a lot of skill. So I think that jobs will be created, and there will be different kinds of jobs. Now, the other thing we got to realize that when it comes to transportation, I know you guys can remember the travel agencies. The travel agencies just hired many, many thousands upon thousands of people, so that when Llewelyn went to fly from London back to his home of Africa, then he would go through a travel agency. Well, they're hit, and there are no more travel agencies. So I think that all of this change has taken place, but in every instance, when we switch from buggies, horses and buggies, to the combustion engine, when we switch from typewriters to computers, when we switch from taxi cabs, if you will, to Uber, or whatever the case might be, we have to be smart enough, and the demand has to be so that we will replace all of the lost jobs with better jobs. Now the question is, how long will it take? Because if you look at America in the last 30 years, there has always been pockets of people who did not adjust when the great economies, you know, of the North, the Rust Belt they call it now, when it disappeared. So I do think that we will replace all of the lost jobs with better jobs. And when it comes to the gig economy, I grew up in Southern Louisiana. We didn't have chicken. We had boiled peanuts, and we had crawfish, and we had tomatoes, and we had gumbo. As a matter of fact, when I got to Austin, people would sell stuff on the side of the road. But I think that a gig economy would be there. But I think two things It's going to happen. Number one, you're going to have a traditional gig economy, and then you're going to have an upscale gig economy for wealthy people. All right. Now, Llewelyn, you're English. You know what it is to be a nanny in England, and how much you can do well in England, right?
I lived in England, but no, I neither employed nor did I operate as a domestic servant.
Well,
you had to serve. You enjoyed the service
understand
of one, maybe.
But you do understand. So my point is, I think that, look, we have to have a forward-looking, and we have to deal with this proposition. Every job that disappeared, we have to replace it. You know, how rapid jobs disappeared and how rapidly as Llewelyn said, and you guys said 3 weeks ago, look at what the entrepreneurs are doing right now to create new jobs. So I think we need a metric on job creation, because, you know, even the economists, Llewelyn, did not have the gig economy in their formula when talking about the whole idea of the unemployment rate. Maybe the underworld economy, the underground economy in America was billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. And as the Soviet Union has taught us over the years, when it was really rolling as a communist society, people will always figure a way how to introduce market economies and how to make a living. I think it's going to be tough, but I think we have to start with the proposition that every job that is taken away, ideas, new technology, whether it's a grid, whether it's electric automobile, or whatever the case might be, each job will be replaced.
I agree. Let's pause for a moment to do my plug of the Digital 360 Summit and thank our sponsors real quick. So again, the Digital 360 Summit is going. The Digital 360 Summit is going through a change. We're going to go virtual, and it's going to be August 18th through September 15th. And we will be publishing the final schedules in the coming weeks. But you know, we're doing this in recognition of COVID and the fact that social distancing is paramount, and we still don't have all the answers to this. So we will have Tuesday afternoons and Thursday afternoons 3-hour sessions for 7 weeks, and to cover all the schedule that we had originally created. And we have added 2 new sections, 2 new verticals. So we have added a smart factory keynote and panel, and that will focus on Industry 4.0 and manufacturing of the future and so on. And then we are adding another vertical on the smart flight in space keynote and panel. The keynote is from gentleman from NASA, and the panel is going to be fantastic. And I want to say that real quick before I switch modes, to thank the Smart Water Summit, Smart Utility Summit for sponsoring. But switching back to the topic of the panels and the Digital 360 Summit and the new verticals, especially the space, the flight and space one, wanted to talk to you guys real quickly about one point. Last week was a pretty epic week for the space program. Astronauts went back in space, this time taken into space by SpaceX. And so if you're keeping track of sort of records and amazing milestones, there are only 4 countries in the planet that have put a man on space. And then there is SpaceX with Elon Musk. What does that tell you?
Well, you know, let's go back to what I always thought NASA was. I thought NASA was always a research unit to provide products. You know, NASA gave us the computers. Well, it gave us the calculators. It gave us computers. It gave us all the things that we have to communicate with. It gave us Tang. It gave us Relax back. So I've always, when I thought of NASA, when I think of NASA, even in my classes, where we take a technology and wrap it around a business model, I always go to NASA. So the question is, will the new model of NASA, the Mars model of NASA, will it provide the same kinds of technologies so that we can start companies? Now, the difference is NASA's technology belongs to you and me, because it's a state, it's your tax money, right? What happens when a private company creates different kinds of things? And when I say create things, I mean everything from seat belts, like I said, to Tang, to the different kinds of food, to computers. All of these things were created by NASA, and we took those ideas from NASA and commercialized them. As Llewelyn would say, if there's no commercialization in this new effort, it really doesn't mean a damn thing to the economy. So to me, it has to be a technology transfer. What are we learning?
Yeah.
Don't let's not forget.
Mhm.
The purpose
Well,
of
so let me, on the SpaceX point, I agree, I concur. I don't know where SpaceX is on the following though, but you're probably aware of the fact that Tesla has released all their patents related to their electric cars. So anybody can go and copy their technology and make a.
absolutely, it's knowledge and know-how. So I want to know if we find a new way, for example, to stretch,
Mhm.
and will that be commercialized? Will we have the right to do the patents and create a tang, or
Mhm.
create a new kind of food, or
Mhm.
to create a new kind of, I like relax the back, because that company came out of the technology where they were trying to make the astronauts relax.
Right.
So my question is, when we had private labs at AT&T and private labs wherever, that technology is private,
Mhm.
not available. So my question is, will those kind of technologies be made available to the general public for commercialization to improve society, whether it's communication, whether it's flying around, whether it's anti-gravity, whether it's clothing? Remember that, you see these kids walking around these jumpsuits, are just astronaut suits, right? That's all it was, right? I mean, come on, it was just, and then, the big one to me, I'm a veteran, it's a Jeep.
Right.
I said, Dr. Butler, you want to drive a Jeep? They gave me 2 when I was in the service to drive around in. But what a great commercialization to take the Jeep and make people love it and commercialize it, and Americans drive around in them. So I say the same thing about the project, the Musk project, and space now.
Mhm.
I applaud everything you just said, John. I'm in total agreement. I think it's a very good point you brought up. On the other hand, we certainly are seeing SpaceX doing this a lot more cheaply. I've had a lot of experience at technology transfer. I run conferences on it and worked with our national laboratories on developing the cooperative research agreements that the creators. It's a very tough subject. If you have SpaceX go to the space station cheaper, that's very good. Now, you are so right. The technology should be ours because we're paying for it. SpaceX is a contractor to the government, and that contract should include an open source arrangement so that nothing comes out of it is totally proprietary. But I think to touch on another point here, and that is the government is very good initially at doing things. When it gets into production, when it gets into manufacturing, it falls back. It's not so good.
Mhm.
The bureaucracy and the politics, in truth. The government works at its very best when it is pulling, when it says, I want you to go to the moon or to the space station or to do this, and says it to private industry, go and do it. That's pulling. If you have them pushing, as for example they do in the Department of Energy with new technologies, it tends to be very expensive, and eventually the decision of who's a winner or a loser has to be political because it hasn't been a commercial enterprise. And that's a very difficult call. So we keep bad technologies alive for a long time. But it's a very important area, and you make a vitally important point about if we pay for the technology, we should own it. I was once at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab looking at a fusion device, which was quite impressive, and it was the early days of the internet. And I really missed the big story because I didn't understand what the man was telling me. He said, when we learn something on the machine, this gigantic device, I go over here and I got this great thing. It was the internet. He said, I can just talk to people all over the world with this. And I thought it was just souped up telex. I didn't understand it. I missed the big story. And I said, oh, well, when you make a discovery, you share it with your colleagues around the world. He said, hell no, I filed for a patent. So this was government money in a government laboratory. And nonetheless, there is this difficulty of intellectual property. And it is an intellectual property issue. and we are very confused at all levels in the country about intellectual property, how to protect it, and how also, if the government, if the people have paid for it, making it available to the people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, clearly, you know, copyright and intellectual property is a big deal, right? And so that brings me back to my sharing of my wonderful idea to eliminate poverty. I wonder if you guys want to kick that can down the road one more time. I send it to you on a note.
I'm going to use it. I'm going to write it into a column somewhere because I think it's critically intriguing. I'd like to try it on an Economist, though, to find out why this perpetual motion machine won't work. But prima facie, it sounds fabulous. We all generate data, ergo, that is our passive output. And we paid for our passive output, the data we generate, whether we're sleeping under a bridge or luxuriating at Texas State.
Well, the simple, I'll let you jump in, John, but the simple thing that I think about, right, is a lot of people that are in food stamps trying to make a living sell their blood and their plasma, right? Everybody has been doing that forever. Well, why not everything else?
Well, I can answer that. You know, we can also sell your hair, but I can answer that because, as you know, there's data and then there's information. Yeah. So we like to think that I do lots of big data. All of our research is on big data now. Mm-hmm. But what you have to do is make the data valuable and make it a value add. And the way the world is now, you have all of the data. So I am producing data. And the question is, if I'm going to pay for your data, I have to make sure that there's a return on data. Mm-hmm. And if we look at the models that have been generated by data, the free models, I think the free model is a good business model. So for years and years, television is a free model. I get it free, and the advertisers pay for it. Skype is a free model. I'll get it free, and they'll charge 30% of the large companies for the Skype, and they pay for it for me. Mm-hmm. So what you're talking about is a free model. Mm-hmm. Now, the question is, who owns the data? Do I own the data? And this is being debated in Europe now. Mm-hmm. Does whoever AT&T own the data? So I'll say this: if I can take data and have enough advertising, and I know where people are going, and we call this social physics now. I have a good friend, Pentland, who wrote a book called Social Physics, and I gave a talk at NASA called The Impact of Social Physics on the Managerial Science. And all of the physicists were saying, with all of the data that we have, we can predict the movement of people and where they go better than we can predict the movement of the stars now. So if I can have a business model where I can take the data and make it valuable to me, then I would pay you a measly $100,000 a year for your data. But if not, it's just garbage that you have produced.
Correct. I concur with that. The point is that today we surrender the data for free when we click and accept all the terms and conditions of Google and everybody else. So, you know, if there was a repository before that had my data earmarked for me, like copyrights, and then after that, when I click, it pulls the data through that pipe, then I should be compensated.
This data is a bit of a two-edged sword. If you monetize it at the individual level, at the generation level, suddenly you start affecting the nature of the data. People will think, oh, if I do this, I can get paid more for it than if I do that.
Sure.
Although you're now—
that's called capitalism.
You're now distorting the truth of the data, and then it becomes infected with—
I don't think so.
Well, I have a better plan for you, Andreas. This is what we need to do right now. Mm-hmm. You know, when our society disappears, they'll know nothing about us because it's all in zero and ones. Mm-hmm. We need some clay tablets. We need to put all of equations, whether it's Einstein equations or whether what it is that we know about the world. We need to put it on clay tablets because you know, a million years from now, people won't be able to read all the stuff that we have.
Right.
So what I want to do, I want to create a business that put up all our great ideas, the movement of knowledge on clay tablets, so that when they dig it up, you'll be looking at an ancient Egypt. Or you're looking at the dead scroll rolls, right? So what I mean, they're gonna dig up this computer tape, and they're gonna say, what the hell is this?
That's right.
So I think we should put all of our your knowledge about the grid, knowledge about Tesla, right? All the knowledge about everything, and as we talk about, you know, anti-gravity stuff. So we won't lose data again. We won't lose knowledge and know-how.
Right.
So I think we get a company together and we get some clay tablets, and we put everything on clay tablets and bury them.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Can I ask you a question, Andres?
Yes, sir.
Quite a different one. You're interested in utilities and energy. Future role of hydrogen.
Yeah, I mean, hydrogen is, again, you know, when you think about energy and what energy is, right? You cannot destroy it. You can only transform it. You cannot create it, right? So hydrogen makes a perfect sense as you know, as we learn to manage the notion of pressurized hydrogen and the safety issues around that. So you know, the Nikola truck that I'm talking about, which is publicly traded, went out last week, and the stock went IPO at 30, now trading at $80. They're using hydrogen.
They're using hydrogen for what?
They're using hydrogen to recharge. They're using hydrogen to recharge the battery that powers the truck.
Through a fuel cell.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So there are clearly, you know, the thing about hydrogen that it has that is really good is there's abundant, and it has high density, right? The challenge with hydrogen is that it's expensive, given today's technology and today's knowledge, to create it. So that's the problem, right? I mean, you know,
how do you say it has high density?
Expensive. So it's just, to me, these are all limitations of our knowledge.
How do you say it has high density? It has a very, it's a very light atom. It's the lightest atom, and it has.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere, and when you compress it,
because
you put lots of electrons, hydrogen electrons, in a tiny space.
It has more. It has lower fuel density.
Correct. It's the lightest gas, right? It has the smallest amount of mass, so more of them fit in the same space than the other elements.
So the last time it was used was in the Zeppelin, is that right?
Right.
In a commercial kind of way, in the Zeppelin, they couldn't control it, right?
Yeah, it's, again, you know, this whole journey, Llewelyn, and you know, a lot of people get all radical about right or wrong or green or dirty. To me, it's all engineering limitations of our knowledge of physics, chemistry, and math, and you know, we're just learning as a society and uncovering things, and then people go, oh my God, look at that, he can land a rocket, you know, standing still. How did he do that? You know, what did he, you know, I mean, it's just knowledge, you know, we're just barely scratching the surface.
I think so. Let me ask you this: what was the hydrogen in the space in the space system that we use? How much hydrogen did we use going to the moon and etc.? Because it's abundant everywhere.
Oh yeah. Well, it's tons. You know, so I think that, you know, like the Falcon, I don't know exactly the numbers. I haven't kept up with all that data, but you know, the payload of compressed hydrogen in the Falcon rocket that took to the last mission to space is probably in the order of, you know, I don't know, I'm guessing 15,000 tons of hydrogen.
Okay, so when Tesla, who was I read a lot of Tesla. I mean, that's my main scientist. So he argued that we could actually, all the energy that we need to run everything is really just around us. And if we could capture, to your point, the scientific element of all the energy, because it would all be free. Electricity would be free, everything.
Oh yeah.
How do you see moving forward the relationship with Llewelyn's question about hydrogen and where we are with Nikola Tesla and you know, and electricity. And
so let's just grant ourselves on the following fact. All the energy that we're using today, that some people call renewable and some people call non-renewable, that some people call dirty or green, all of it is really energy storage created by the sun. Some took millions of years, some took 10 years, some took one day. But so the amount of sunshine energy that comes through Earth every day, one day of solar energy that passes through us as we're spinning around the sun, is, if we could capture it that one day, all of it, all the gigawatts that come through, if we could capture it one day, it would last our entire lifetime. Okay,
so what about the wireless electricity? Where are we on? I mean, I try to read, especially
there are several universities, MIT being the leader on that in the US, but there are several UK universities, there are several Canadian universities, and Japanese universities, and Korean universities trying to master you know, wireless charging. So the challenge is this, right? It's again, as you probably know, my voice, we hear each other, but what we're hearing is not, I don't have a voice. I speak on a frequency, and you hear that frequency because our ear can hear that frequency. Our ears cannot hear subsonic frequencies, like the whistle of the dog, right? So again, you know, everything that we do is a frequency. The colors that you see in this screen is a frequency that I can see with my eye. I cannot see certain colors and certain frequencies, but I can see others. So again, everything that we see, everything that we do is frequencies as a manifestation of movement of energy. And so all this is, again, learning the physics and learning how to understand and how to unleash this. So the challenge with nuclear stuff is that we don't know how to tag an electron. So for example, a lot of people say, well, but if I have a wire that goes from the transformer in the house to outside my house into my house, I could tell you that I got the electron that you sent me from the power plant. But here's the problem. Transformers don't have wires inside them. Transformers are wound, and then they're sitting like this, and the electrons jump from one node to the other node.
Yes.
And there is no way to physically connect one electron to the left that I painted green all the way through 5,000 transformers to my house, because every time that electron jumped inside a transformer, it went from a magnetic field that is built against the two nodes.
Yes. Well, speaking of, I just like it when they blow.
There is no physical connection of the electrons that get created and get delivered. None.
Speaking of that, we have a question from the audience that says, what percentage will stay at home rather than go back to the office after COVID is over? Do you think we'll all be looking through color, as you just said, at a screen the rest of our life?
I think so.
What percentage do you think will stay permanently at home?
80%.
That is deal.
I think 80%.
Wow.
I don't think that at all. I think we are social animals, and many of us need to work in a social environment.
You know, I think things are going to change, Llewelyn. I think the work week is going to get shrunk to 4 days a week. I think the weekends will get increased. I think the emphasis on well-being and all that is going to be around me having a shrink, having my masseuse, doing happy hour, spending more time with my family. That's where the balance of productivity is, not just sleeping, but socializing. I think that's
there is a certain energizing that comes with just going somewhere, which is why CEOs fly around in jets. They don't.
Yeah.
That is energizing. It doesn't do anything else very much. I was once talking to the head of AT&T Technologies years ago. I was actually running a conference on technology transfer, and it was in Boston. And I was talking to him after he'd given his talk, and I said, you have to be going because the limo's waiting for you. He said, that's nothing. There's an airplane waiting for me at the airport, and at LaGuardia, there's a helicopter waiting to take me to King of Prussia. This was a lot of very expensive transportation, but now it was part of the energizing of the man.
Sure, sure.
This works. It's much harder to be energized sitting at home, going to the refrigerator, having a snack, not getting dressed or moved, all of those things. And I think I used to run conferences, lots of conferences, 1,000 of them maybe, on energy, on defense, on pure science, and on technology transfer. And we knew that if there hadn't been any conferences in a particular area for a while, people would come, not because there was new information, but because they wanted to see other people.
Sure,
To be in a social environment that is part of a conference. People go to a conference to get information, but they also go to get another job, they go to schmooze, they go to have a drink, they go to, do all these human things. And if you leave people to work at home, you subtract an awful lot of that human contact, and I don't think it'll work very well. There are people who like working at home, who are good at it, most writers do, most artists do, but not for me and not for a lot of other people.
Well, and I think you just made the argument for college too.
Well, I think that is the argument for college. I did not, as you know, go to college myself. I have been back quite a few times to give lectures, but I even got an honorary degree from one. But the thing is, it's the social environment. It's the people, the learning when you're young, when that's invaluable, quite apart from the sex.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. But here's a spin-off that I want you to think about. The current so my youngest son just turned 19, and we were celebrating him and talking about all his mischiefs and whatever, and having a good time, and gave him gifts and sang happy birthday and had a cake and all that. And this was on Monday, and over the weekend we just made it a weekend-long thing. But here's the thing that I think is really part of why the gig economy and things are shifting. That generation is totally internet, electronic, on demand. They don't watch TV, Llewelyn. They don't go to the TV at 5 o'clock to see Brian Williams or whatever the name of the new guy is, because that's how long I have seen Brian Williams. I think he retired some time ago or something. But these guys watch everything on demand. So college, work, everything is going to shift to on demand. Whenever I need to, in my schedule, my time, my need.
Isn't on demand very isolating? If we only do
not if you and I, not if the five of us are hanging out all the time and doing it together. It's not that you're on your own. Is that I don't want to conform to some silly rule of why I can't stay in this morning with my son that needs me in the house. And so on demand, adjusting to me, and then I'll just hang out with my posse.
In terms of education and people being educated, one of the advantages of television in the old-fashioned way was that you watched things and you saw things that you would not have sought otherwise. People who've never been to the opera wouldn't know if they would like it. And they probably won't go to find out. That's not why I imagine it, because it's an expensive undertaking. If you have people doing everything on demand, it substantiates their prejudices without any fresh sunlight coming into their world. What do you think of that, John?
Well, you're.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
I think you're right. This is what happened to newspapers. This is why there are no more newspapers. And this is why I still go to the library, because I go to look for an article and I stumble onto something else. I go to look at one thing and the serendipity is taken out of the equation. But certainly that's what happened to newspapers, and it's happening to television now. That is, I don't have to wait for the newspaper to publish something. I can just look at it on demand. But the biggest thing, I think, Andreas, is it takes serendipity out of the equation. Can you imagine with me a scientist, right? A scientist that's looking for a great invention. Most of those inventions, from the cure to polio to flight, has been serendipity. That is, they were not looking for polio on demand. But I think that will be a part of our world. And if we relate it to personality, perhaps the people who are sort of, loners would go that way. And the person who are socialites like Andreas have got to get out. So maybe what we're doing is saying that now you have an option of what you want to do, but it would be the socialites who will rule the world and not those who are isolationists.
I agree
that very much. I like that.
I agree with that 300%. Yeah, I'll just part by saying that this new generation, that is a generation of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they are very plugged in. They have all the serendipitous you can think of. They have all kinds of outlets and apps and sources that you and I don't know about and don't use every day.
Let me tell you something, Andreas.
They talk to the people in their ecosystem, and they get continuous checking on, how do you feel? Do you like that? Don't you like that? All the time, more than we do. We are probably more isolated and do whatever we want, and we don't ask a lot of people for feedback. They do nonstop about everything.
The only thing I can tell you is that business model will be obsolete in 20 years, and there will be something else.
Oh yeah. So it'd be interesting to see. Again, my point about them and their influence is they're the next workforce and the future of that workforce, and there's already all kinds of challenges about keeping them interested and keeping them focused and teaching them the right thing. A lot of them are bypassing college and careers because they don't want to spend 3 or 4 years learning something they're never going to use. They want to really go and do what they want to do, and then learn just this thing. I want to learn how to make this.
But we always had trade schools. You can always go to trade schools if you don't want to read Plato.
Yeah. That's what's happening. And I think that, the challenge is, how do we take everything that we do and turn it in through the prism of on-demand?
We're out of time, gentlemen. I'm going to have to go. But I'd love next week possibly to talk about trade schools and reading Plato, because there actually is such a trade school in South Carolina, where they teach a good liberal arts course plus trade. And one of the interesting things for an entrepreneur like myself is about 1/3 of the graduates start their own businesses. And they start their own businesses because they've got a sellable skill. Where if you're medieval history, just no market for it.
But most entrepreneurs haven't been to school for the most part. They get wealthy. So I asked this guy I was studying, I said, why didn't you go to school, become educated? He said, because I'd rather say I is rich than I am poor.
All right, I like it. Take care, gentlemen. I got to get on another program.
Take care.
Take care, everybody.
Take us away, John.
Okay.
Maestro.
Freight train going so fast. Freight train going so fast. Please don't tell what train I'm on, so they won't know where I'm going. When I die, please bury me deep down at the end of Bigger Street, so I can hear the number 9 and it goes on passing by.
See you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
You bet.
Let me stop this real quick.